So it is my pleasure to welcome Vanessa Langenberg for the next session. Vanessa is the Growth and Innovation Program Lead at ILA. So we're delighted to have you along, Vanessa, to talk to us about the topic of assistive tech, particularly with the First Nation lens. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. I'll just bring up my slides and we'll hope for the best. Can everyone see the slides and hear me okay?
That's great, Vanessa. Yep.
Great. Thank you. So I would like to first pay my respects to the Wurundjeri Wurrung peoples of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the lands on which I'm joining from, which is now called Merrybeck in Naarm, Melbourne. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people across Australia, their elders past and present, and those who have allowed us to share their images and their voices throughout this presentation. My name is Vanessa Langenberg. As Paul mentioned, I'm the Growth and Innovation Program Lead at ILA. I'm not a clinical expert. My background is in research and communications, and my aim really is to lift the voices of older people that I speak with as the experts in their own care. As I go through my presentation, it is really important to remember that only the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person who is the recipient of a service or interaction can determine whether it is culturally safe. And that is a very individual and a very diverse experience. But today I am excited to share with you some of our Live Up program learnings from consultations with older First Nations people and staff from Aboriginal community-controlled health organisations on what culturally safe AT information can look like to some service users or participants. I encourage you to reflect on how their insights might influence or evolve your own practice, especially in how you think about AT or how you might talk about it with older people from different communities. So in response to the 2020 review of assistive technology in Australia report, ILA has been funded by the Australian Department of Health and Aged Care to develop Live Up. It's been mentioned quite a lot so far, but Live Up is a healthy ageing initiative that's designed to help older people live independently and productively and to discover their upside of ageing. So Auntie Ellie Chatfield, a proud Gamilaroi woman and 2022 ILA research participant, shared with us her perspective on healthy ageing. She said, after a bushfire, many things sprout. Trees are germinated and come to life after fires. And that conversation arising from those ashes is important and it runs parallel with your life and growing older. There are many things that come out of it. So wellness and reablement strategies like assistive technology or AT can give people a helping hand in many ways so they have more energy for the things they need or love to do. But that knowledge is often concentrated in the hands of health professionals tied to medical, hospital and aged care systems. So the goal here is to empower older people as individuals to have more direct access at their fingertips to a variety of wellness and reablement strategies, including AT, so they can own and understand it themselves. So in these photos here, you can see we collaborated with Campfire X and Gurul Aboriginal Corporation to host a yarning circle about low-risk AT with La Perouse community elders. That was held at Yarra House in Bidjigal Country. Julie Salt said, I'm the controller of my own life. Some of these things would be great for me. And while Helen discovered that an affordable adaptive knife that could easily be purchased from a mainstream supplier like Kitchen Warehouse, helps her to keep her cooking for herself. She said, now with that knife, I can chop up my pumpkin. It's the best thing that's ever happened to us, getting us up and doing these things. So it's all about people knowing their options so they have a better sense of control over their choices. Stronger, more inclusive access to AT is key to supporting the Statement of Rights under the new Aged Care Act. So in particular, the rights of the older person to exercise control and to make decisions that affect their life and to be informed in a way that they understand. So central to that vision is providing the AT information older people need to stay independent and connected in the way that they want to receive it. So back in 2022, ILA conducted research with Live Up's First Nations audience to better understand what this can look like. And the participants commonly felt that AT information is too white-centred. It doesn't value enough First Nations knowledge systems. So not only does that marginalise First Nations people from the benefits of exploring AT, but it means we're missing out on integrating AT uptake with other important protective factors like community support or connection to country or island home. It's weakening the effectiveness of reablement practices and achieving holistic health outcomes. One participant exclaimed, "The challenge with a lot of what we do, whether that be communications or access to services, is we ask people to not be Indigenous first. Then once they get that, then they can be Indigenous on top of that. And it just doesn't work like that." They said, "We need to deepen older First Nations people's experiences of AT with culture, country, and community. Those things are their protection to help them thrive as they grow older." So the research participants highlighted 9 principles they felt were important to culturally safe information about AT. Now, there is a growing body of theory around these principles in health, disability, and aged care. Many should feel familiar, and yet the participants still felt the sector was missing the mark somewhere in our understanding of how to apply those principles to practice. So in 2023, we conducted further research yarns to unpack what cultural safety might look like to some older First Nations people, specifically in an AT context. And that led to the development of the Live Up Better Practice Guide for culturally safe information about assistive products to support Live Up on a program level, but also the sector. It's available on the KeepAble website, and it walks through each principle, identifying the existing challenges or the gaps and the opportunities for better information provision. The guide brings together the voices of 26 ACCHO staff and 24 older First Nations people from over 21 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities and language groups. I'll share high level some of what was shared. So the participants raised several recommendations to create more trauma-aware AT information. They said, avoid medical terminology and use plain English. The clinical approach that's often used to talk about AT can be alienating, particularly for those who've been denied an education. To frame AT as a suggestion, not a directive or instruction, and using real case studies about someone the person might relate to as a peer might help with that. To seek to understand the individual as well as cultural ways of knowing, being, and doing by asking more questions respectfully, so you can choose AT with, not for, the older person. So some participants said there were instances where they felt they had to choose between an Aboriginal way and a Western way of living because their goals were misunderstood because questions just were not asked. So, for example, one participant talked about how they were struggling to do their art, so they were given a magnifier. But for that participant, it was really important to them that they could do their art with their women's group, so they could stay socially connected, as well as learn and share stories that they could reflect back in their artwork. And those groups sometimes run outside, they sometimes run into the night, so they wanted to learn about the full range of assistive products available to them in this context that mattered to them so that they could self-advocate better. For example, this particular participant was interested in a hands-free option with lighting. Some participants also shared that in noticing their functional decline, they'd dived deeper into their health and genetics and discovered more about their history, which for some was distressing. Some shared that the pain, the fatigue, the lack of concentration that was causing their task-based concerns was actually the result of their trauma and grief. So they asked for more information, providing emotional and mental health support along their journey with AT, and to connect AT to individual healing processes. So, for example, if an assistive product can help the older person participate in a community centre, do arts and craft, or travel back to country. Finally, the aged care sector often talks about how AT can help you stay at home for longer and age in place. And participants highlighted the incredible importance of staying at home on country, but they did explain that home can have significant emotional weight, and many have limited control over their current living situation for various reasons that aren't solved through AT. So they stress the need for information providers who talk about aging in place to also be mindful not to foster any fear or shame over living or receiving care off country or away from what they felt was home. So they suggested linking AT to connection to place and country in less physical ways as well, to consider how wherever the person lives, they might be able to use different assistive products to share stories, connect to nature, or listen to songs to help keep them connected and strong. So here are some examples from our participants of how low-risk products had previously or could be used to maintain their connection to country wherever they live. And they linked to other protective factors identified by the participants as important for healthy aging, things such as mindfulness, positive role modelling, nutrition. So a car transfer bar might help the older person travel back to their ancestral lands or visit special sites that are important to them. A pill organizer might help the older person more comfortably spend time away from home so they can engage in any cultural events or camps. A double-handled mug might just help them enjoy a longer yarn with their family. A participant said even the language used, it's a white lens and government speak, like AT as a tool of self-management. Independence doesn't equate to being alone, and for the participants, the idea of self-management, particularly in relation to health, may not fit well with collectivist cultures. So in collectivist cultures, a person's identity and well-being is deeply connected to their family and their community. And the participants commonly said they draw energy to engage in healthy behaviours from their families and communities. And some also valued being able to use their independence and capacity to be able to better engage interdependently. However, at the same time, the participants also had some fears that AT use can interfere with their relationships. So some of the concerns were that AT means you can't look after yourself as well, and by extension others. That the house will feel old or sick, so young ones won't want to visit. That children and grandchildren will treat you as more fragile. And those who lived in open or shared households felt they had limited control over how they use their AT and maintain its safe working life. Despite the stigma that some participants felt was attached to AT, they did point out many positive aspects, including the shared benefits. So on a family level, they said using AT can help you continue to fulfill caregiving obligations. For example, using an adaptive car product so they can keep taking their grandkids to school. The AT can allow for more quality, stress-free time together. That AT use can also protect the parent-child dynamic, which they felt was sacred, as was the ability to maintain other roles in community, like as a teacher or a tradition keeper. Beyond maintaining community participation, some felt that by using AT, they could role model courage and self-resilience, and that it taught others, particularly the young, how to be more respectful and supportive of those experiencing functional challenges. So several stories were shared about how the older person liked to use their AT to perform household tasks or chores with their grandkids, to then have discussions between them about coping with change and getting older. Some participants also shared that a lower life expectancy among Aboriginal people had lowered their health expectations, and they wanted to lead by example to show how with the right assistive support, they can thrive and not just survive in older age. So the participants shared these insights not to romanticise ageing and the AT, but to emphasise the need for earlier, more strengths-based conversations. They felt there were several issues with the current conversations about AT. So AT conversations typically occur only after injury or illness has really forced the older person to seek health advice, and that's framing AT as a tool to avoid negative outcomes rather than to enhance strengths. I felt that the older person is forced to identify with a state of functional decline or disability rather than what they value, like strong relationships. The AT is treated as just a piece of equipment that gets the job done, rather than a support for broader protective factors. And finally, social and emotional well-being is treated secondary to physical health, rather than interconnected. So using the learnings from our research, I've been working in partnership with Little Rocket, the Victorian Aboriginal Community Controlled Health Organisation, Victorian Aboriginal Health Service, and an elder working group, which you can see on the screen, to co-design information about low-risk assistive products tailored for First Nations communities. Spike on the right there summed it up really well. He said, "It knocks you around when you can't do things anymore. Simple things can make life easier." So we work with Bangarang artist May Atkinson to create artwork that tells a story of elders using assistive products. In the bottom left corner, you can see elders shrouded in blue walking together toward a gathering place representing the heart of the community. You can see two guiding hands on either side of that journey. One hand represents the elders, the other hand represents the helping hand of assistive products that can support the health and independence of elders as they walk on their journey. Along the bottom, you see country depicted in red, symbolising the importance of connection to land. And at the top, you see traditional ways of knowledge passed down through the generations, guiding their elders as they navigate their journey. So some of the working group insights included use simpler terms like tools or helping hands instead of assistive products. That healthy ageing is about keeping your spirit strong so that you can take care of yourself and others. that some older First Nations people might find strength in caregiving, and framing information about AT as useful for family, friends, younger ones, not just older people, can encourage stronger engagement. The imagery that's available about AT is often white and clinical looking. It often has a health professional helping or watching over the older person. So it's really important to show older First Nations people using AT with autonomy in warm, natural settings. The goal with the resources really was to make the use of AT feel like a normal part of living, encouraging connection and reducing any stigma. So together we've created different materials, including a booklet called Everyday Tools to Help Mob Guide, and it aims to help older First Nations people understand low-risk product types and different access options. There's also a buying guide sheet, which supports older First Nations people to advocate for and access what they're interested in, so it has guidance on search terms and price ranges. There's also a collection of social tiles and a video which can be used to show how different products can support the older person, whether that be the kitchen, bedroom, living area, or outdoors. I wanted to also highlight some other resources that might help you motivate and engage your service participants about wellness and reablement. So there's a series of healthy aging video yarns that are made by, with, and for First Nations people. We've got one that's featuring renowned photojournalist Auntie Barbara McGravy and community elders from La Perouse as they share how they might benefit from assistive products. This might have previously been shared in the chat, but we also have our legacy print resource, Making Choices, Finding Solutions. So with tips and tricks for AT and home modifications, it's been translated from English into 4 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander languages and 10 other multicultural languages. There's also a plain English available. So you can find all the digital and print materials mentioned on the KeepAble website. They're under Tools, then KeepAble Tools, and resources about assistive technology. But people can only ever speak for themselves. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to wellness and reablement. But I do hope this presentation does inspire you to seek out the opportunities for better information provision. Stronger, more inclusive access to AT does require a shift in thinking. It means empowering older people to be able to create and therefore have more ownership over AT information and wellness and reablement knowledge. It means recognising that while cultural safety elements might be transferable from other health practice and policy, they do look unique in the AT space. And finally, it means proactively creating the space for ongoing intercultural dialogue to help decolonise mainstream AT provision and to uplift Indigenous knowledge, so that every older person, as we say, can add life to years, not just years to life. Thank you so much for listening. I know it's probably a little bit to digest, and I am mindful of time, but if you do have any questions or you would like to share any experiences, please drop them in the chat. I will be here at the end to answer any questions during the Q&A. I'll throw back to Paul.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. You did that really well. You've actually caught us up 10 minutes on the time clock, so that's good. I just had a couple of questions that came to my mind as you were presenting. I mean, I think the issue of explaining assistive tech not in a professional way, but in some way that actually relates to First Nations experience makes an awful lot of sense. And my suspicion would be that that's not only an issue for First Nations communities, it's probably an issue more broadly. What would your observations be on that?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think it's isolated to First Nations communities. I think the appetite is there from everyone to learn about AT in a more relatable way, or like it says, in a way that they understand outside of a clinical environment, because I think that clinical environment then has different associations with it as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think most of those insights are really helpful for different population groups.
Yeah, they're much more generally applicable, as well as helping you specifically with First Nations clients. Yep. Another question that I had was around what the First Nations people were asking for in terms of what it means, not only for assistive tech, but more broadly for reablement, because it struck me that what they wanted was cultural relevance all the way through their engagement with service providers. Do you want to comment on that at all?
I think I would say that sort of the common thread was that AT isn't just a piece of equipment, that you really need to look at it in terms of how it can benefit all sorts of areas. Otherwise, the interest just isn't there, or the uptake, they won't maintain it. So yeah, I think it's about speaking about other areas holistically to see how AT can really be embedded and have a genuine and meaningful impact, rather than just a piece of equipment.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you very much, Vanessa. As you say, you'll be available a little later when we have our open questions session at the end. So thank you now for your presentation.